perhaps at lunch today. I not having had opportunity to have my lunch yet. Improvising, he continued. Although we will wait on specifics, perhaps we could ruminate on general world conditions. In particular, no, Mr. Bain said. No. Mr. Tagomi thought. Sir, he said, I am not well today. I had a grievous incident. It was my hope to confide it to you. I'm sorry, Mr. Bain said. I'll ring you back later. The phone clicked. It abruptly hung up. I offended him, Mr. Tagomi thought. He must have gathered correctly that I totally failed to inform my staff about the old gentleman. But it is a trifle. He pressed the intercom button and said, Mr. Ramsey, please come into my office. I can correct that immediately. More is involved, he decided. The Borman death had shaken him. A trifle, and yet indicative of my foolish, feckless attitude. Mr. Tagomi felt guilt.
Gonna try the Google
In a quarter mile, turn
just
left.
to avoid Louisville. I'm wandering dangerously close to the city.
Take the next left onto US 150 East.
This is not a good day. I should have consulted the Oracle, discovered what moment it is. I have drifted far from the Tau, that is obvious. Which of the 64 hexagrams, he wondered, am I laboring under? Opening his desk drawer, he
Continue on US 150 East for 5 miles.
So much to ask the sages, so many questions inside me which I can barely articulate. When Mr. Ramsey entered the office, he had already obtained the hexagram. Look, Mr. Ramsey. He showed him the book. The hexagram was 47. Oppression. Exhaustion. A bad omen generally, Mr. Ramsey said. What is your question, sir, if I'm not offending you to ask? I inquired as to the moment, Mr. Tagomi said. The moment for us all. No moving lines. A static hexagram. He shut the book. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Frank Frink, still waiting with his business partner for Wyndham Manson's decision about the money, decided to consult the Oracle. How were things going to turn out? He asked, through the coins. The hexagram was 47. He obtained one moving line, 9 in the 5th place. His nose and feet are cut off. Oppression at the hands of the man with the purple knee bands. Joy comes softly. It furthers one to make offerings and libations. For a long time, at least half an hour, he studied the line and the material connected with it, trying to figure out what it might mean. The hexagram, and especially the moving line, disturbed him. At last he concluded reluctantly that the money would not be forthcoming. You rely on that thing too much, then McCarthy said. At 4 o'clock, a messenger from WM Corporation appeared and handed Frink and McCarthy a manila envelope. When they opened it, they found inside a certified check for $2,000. So you were wrong, McCarthy said. Frink thought, then the Oracle must refer to some future consequence of this. That is the trouble. Later on, when it has happened, you can look back and see exactly what it meant. But now, we can start setting up the shop, McCarthy said. Today? Right now? He felt weary. Why not? We've got our orders made out. All we have to do is stick them in the mail. The sooner the better. For the stuff we can get locally, we'll pick up ourselves. Putting on his jacket, Ed moved to the door of Frink's room. They had talked Frink's landlord into renting them the basement of the building. Now it was used for storage. Once the curtains were out, they could build their bench, put in wiring, lights, begin to mount their motors and belts. They had drawn up sketches, specifications, parts lists, so they had actually already begun. We're in business, Frank Frink realized. They had even agreed on a name. Ed Frink Custom Jewelers. was buying the wood for the bench, maybe electrical parts, but no jewelry supplies. They went then to a lumber supply yard in South San Francisco. By the end of an hour, they had their wood. "What's bothering you?" Ed McCarthy said as they entered a hardware store that dealt on a wholesale basis. "The money gets me down to finance things that way." "All WM understands," McCarthy said. "I know," Rick thought. "That's why it gets me down. We have entered the world. We're like him. Is that a pleasant thought?" "Don't look back," McCarthy said. "Look ahead to the business." "I am looking ahead," Rick thought. He thought of the hexagram. What offerings and libations can I make? And to whom? Chapter 7. The handsome young Japanese couple who had visited Robert Childen's store, the Kasuras, telephoned him toward the end of the week and requested that he come to their apartment for dinner. He had been waiting for some further word from them, and he was delighted. A little early, he shut up American Artistic Handcrafts, Inc. and took a pedicab to the exclusive district where the Kasuras lived. He knew the district, although no white people lived there. As the pedicab carried him along the winding streets with their lawns and willow trees, Childen gazed up at the modern apartment buildings and marveled at the grace of the designs, the wrought iron balconies, the soaring yet modern columns, pastel colors, the uses of varied textures. It all made up a work of art. He could remember when this had been nothing but rubble from the war. The small Japanese children out playing watched him without comment, then returned to their football or baseball. But, he thought, not so the adults. The well-dressed young Japanese, parking their cars or entering the apartment buildings, noticed him with greater interest. Did he live here? They were perhaps wondering. Young Japanese businessmen coming home from their offices, even the heads of trade missions lived here. He noticed parked Cadillacs. As the pedicab took him closer to his destination, he became increasingly nervous. Very shortly, as he ascended the stairs to the Kasuras' apartment, he thought, "Here I am, not invited in a business context, but a dinner guest." He had, of course, taken special pains with his attire. At least he could be confident of his appearance. My appearance, he thought. Yes, that is it. How do I appear? There is no deceiving anyone. I do not belong here. On this land that white men cleared and built one of their finest cities, I am an outsider in my own country. He came to the proper door along the carpeted hall, rang the bell. Presently the door opened. There stood young Mrs. Kasura in a silk kimono and obi, her long black hair in shining tangle down her neck, smiling in welcome. Behind her in the living room, her husband.
In a quarter mile, turn left onto Indiana 135 North, Green Street Northeast.
Bowing, he entered. Tasteful in the extreme, and so ascetic. Few pieces, a lamp here, table, bookcase, print on the wall. The incredible Japanese sense of what.
At the stop sign, turn left onto Indiana 135 North, Green Street Northeast.
Wabi. It could not be thought in English. The ability to find in simple objects a beauty beyond that of the elaborate or ornate. Something to do with the arrangement. A drink? Mr. Kasura asked. Scotch and soda? Mr. Kasura.
Continue on Indiana 135 North for 13 miles.
Indicating his wife. Betty. And you are? Mr. Childen murmured. Robert. Seated on the soft carpet with their drinks, they listened to a recording of Koto, Japanese 13-string harp. It was newly released by Japanese HMV and quite popular. Childen noticed that all parts of the phonograph were concealed, even the speaker. He could not tell where the sound came from. Not knowing their appetites and dying, Betty said, we have played safe. Your kitchen electric oven is burning T-bone steak, along with this big potato with sauce of sour cream and chives. Maxim utters, no one can earn serving steak to newfound guest first time. Very gratifying, Childen said. Quite fond of steak. And that certainly was so. He rarely had it. The great stockyards from the Middle West did not send out much to the West Coast anymore. He could not recall when he had last had a good steak. It was time for him to graft a guest gift. From his coat pocket he brought a small tissue paper wrapped thing. He laid it discreetly on the low table. Both of them snag a film for you to display a fragment of the relaxation and enjoyment I feel in being here. His hand opened the tissue paper, showing them the gift. Bit of ivory carved a century ago by whalers from New England. Tiny ornamented art object called a scrimshaw. Their faces illuminated with knowledge of the scrimshaws which the old sailors had made in their spare time. No single thing could have summed up old U.S. culture more. Silence. Thank you, Paul said. Robert Sheldon bowed. There was peace then, for a moment, in his heart. This offering, this, as the I Ching put it, libation. It had done what needed to be done. Some of the anxiety and depression which he had felt lately began to lift from him. From Ray Calvin he had received restitution for the Colt 44, plus many written assurances of no second recurrence. And yet it had not eased his heart. Only now, in this unrelated situation, had he for a moment lost the sense that things were in the constant process of going askew. The quality around him, radiations of harmony. That is it, he decided. The proportion, balance. They are so close to the Tao, these two young Japanese. That is why I reacted to them before. I sensed the Tao through them, saw a glimpse of it myself. What would it be like, he wondered, to really know the Tao? The Tao is that which first lets the light and the dark. Occasions the interplay of the two primal forces so that there is always renewal. It is that which keeps it all from wearing down. The universe will never be extinguished, because just when the darkness seems to have smothered all, to be truly transcendent, the new seeds of light are reborn in the very depths. That is the way. The seed falls. It falls into the earth, into the soil, and beneath, out of sight, it comes to life. An hors d'oeuvre, Betty said. She knelt to hold out a plate on which lay small crackers and cheese, etc. He took two gratefully. International news much in notice these days, Paul said as he sipped his drink. While I drove home tonight, I heard direct broadcast of a great patch of Mike State funeral. Munich, including rally of 50,000, flags and the like. Much Ich hatte einen Kamerad singing, body now lying in state for all faithful to view. Yes, it was distressing, Robert Sheldon said. The sudden news earlier this week. At one times tonight saying reliable sources declare Beaver Chirac under house arrest, Betty said, by SD instruction. Bad, Paul said, shaking his head. No doubt the authorities desire to keep order, Sheldon said. But Chirac noted for hasty, headstrong, even half-baked actions, much similar to RS in the past. Recall that flight to England. What else reported by Nippon Times? Paul asked his wife. Much confusion and intriguing. Army units moving from Hilo to Yon. Leaves cancelled, border stations closed. Reichstag in session. Speeches by all. That recalls fine speech I heard by Dr. Goebbels, Robert Sheldon said. On radio, a year or so ago, much witty invective, an audience in palm of hand as usual, ranged throughout the gamut of emotionality. No doubt, with original Adolf Hitler out of things, Dr. Goebbels, a one Nazi speaker. True. Both Paul and Betty agreed, nodding. Dr. Goebbels also has fine children and wife, Sheldon went on. Very high-type individuals. True, Paul and Betty agreed. Family man, in contrast to a number of other grand moguls there, Paul said, of questionable sexual mores. I wouldn't give rumors time of day, Sheldon said. You refer to such as Leroy?
In 800 feet, turn left onto South Old Palmyra Road.
Thinking more of each scoring, Paul said, slowly sipping his drink and scrutinizing it.
Traffic is getting worse. You're still on the fastest route. You will now arrive at 2:06 p.m. Take the next left onto South Old Palmyra Road.
Well, subject not worth discussing, Betty said tactfully, with a glance at the two of them. They had finished their drinks, and she went to refill.
Continue on South Old Palmyra Road for 3 miles.
Blood stirred up in political discussion, Paul said. Everywhere you go, the essential to keep head. Yes, Chilton agreed. Calmness and order, so things return to customary stability. Period after death of leader critical in totalitarian society, Paul said. Lack of tradition and middle-class institutions combine. He broke off. Perhaps better drop politics, he smiled. Like old student days. Robert Chilton felt his face flush, and he bent over his new drink to conceal himself from the eyes of his host. What a dreadful beginning he had made. In a foolish and loud manner he had argued politics. He had been rude in his disagreeing, and only the adroit tact of his host had sufficed to save the evening. How much I have to learn, Chilton thought. They are so graceful and polite. And I, the white barbarian, it is true. For a time, he contented himself with sipping his drink and keeping on his face an artificial expression of enjoyment. I must follow their leads entirely, he told himself. Agree always. Yet in a panic, he thought, my wits scrambled by the drink, and fatigue and nervousness. Can I do it? I will never be invited back anyhow. It is already too late. He felt despair. Betty, having returned from the kitchen, had once more seated herself on the carpet. How attractive, Robert Chilton thought again. The slender body, their figures are so superior, not fat, not bulbous, no bra or girdle needed. I must conceal my longing, that at all costs. And yet now and then he let himself steal a glance at her. Lovely dark colors of her skin, hair, and eyes. We are half-baked compared to them. Allowed out of the kiln before we were fully done. The old aboriginal myth, the truth there. I must divert my thoughts, find social item, anything. His eyes strayed about, seeking some topic. The silence rained heavily, making his tension sizzle. Unbearable. What the hell to say? Something safe. His eyes made out a book on a low black teak cabinet. I see you're reading The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, he said. I hear it on many lips, but pressure of business prevents my own attention. Rising, he went to pick it up, carefully consulting their expressions. They seemed to acknowledge this gesture of sociality, and so he proceeded. Mystery? Excuse my abysmal ignorance. He turned the pages. Not a mystery, Paul said. On the contrary, interesting form of fiction, possibly within genre of science fiction. Oh, no, Betty disagreed. No science in it. No set in future. Science fiction deals with future, in particular future where science has advanced over now. Book fits neither premise. But, Paul said, it deals with alternate present. Many well-known science fiction novels of that sort. To Robert he explained, pardon my insistence in this, but as my wife knows, I was for a long time a science fiction enthusiast. I began that hobby early in my life. I was merely 12. It was during the early days of the war. I see, Robert Chilton said with politeness. Care to borrow, Grasshopper? Paul asked. We will soon be through, no doubt within a day or so. My office being downtown, not far from your esteemed store.
Continue on East Trainer Lane for 2 miles.
He was silent. And then, possibly Chilton thought due to a signal from Betty, continued, You and I, Robert, could eat lunch together on that occasion. Thank you, Robert said. It was all he could say. Lunch in one of the downtown businessmen's fashionable restaurants. He and this stylish, modern, high-place young Japanese. It was too much. He felt his gaze blur. But he went on examining the book and nodding. Yes, he said. This does look interesting. I would very much like to read it. I try to keep up with what's being discussed. Was that proper to say? Admission that his interest lay in books' modishness? Perhaps that was low place. He did not know, and yet he felt that it was. One cannot judge by a book being bestseller, he said. We all know that. Many bestsellers are terrible trash. This, however, he faltered. Betty said, Most true. Average taste really deplorable. As in music, Paul said. No interest in authentic American folk jazz, as example. Robert, are you fond of, say, Bunk Johnson and Kid Ory and the like? Early Dixieland jazz? I have record library of old such music. Original Janet recordings. Robert said, Afraid I know little about Negro music. They did not look exactly pleased at his remark. I prefer classical, Bach and Beethoven. felt now a bit of resentment. Was he supposed to deny the great masters of European music, the timeless classics, in favor of New Orleans jazz from the honky-tonks and bistros of the Negro Quarter? Perhaps if I play selection by New Orleans Rhythm Kings, Paul began, starting from the room, but Betty gave him a warning look. He hesitated, shrugged. "Dinner almost ready," she said. Returning, Paul once more seated himself. A little sulkily, Robert thought, he murmured, "Jazz from New Orleans, most authentic American folk music there is, originated on this continent. All else came from Europe, such as corny English-style ballads." "This is perpetual argument between us," Betty said, smiling at Robert. "I do not share his love of original jazz." Still holding the copy of The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, Robert said, "What sort of alternate present does this book describe?" Betty, after a moment, said, "One in which Germany and Japan lost the war." They were all silent. "Time to eat," Betty said, sliding to her feet. "Please come, two hungry gentlemen businessmen." She cajoled Robert and Paul to the dining table, already set with white tablecloth, silver, china, huge rough napkins, and what Robert recognized as early American bone napkin rings. The silver, too, was sterling silver American. The cups and saucers were Royal Albert, deep blue and yellow. Very exceptional. He could not help
In 1,000 feet, turn left onto Indiana 335 North.
They appeared to be Japanese. He could not tell, that being beyond his field. "That is Amari porcelain," Paul said, perceiving his interest. "From Arita."
Take the next left onto Indiana 335 North.
They seated themselves. "Coffee?" Betty asked Robert. "Yes," he said. "Thanks." "Toward end of meal," she said, going to get the serving cart.
Continue on Indiana 335 North for 2 miles.
Meal delicious. She was quite an exceptional cook. The salad in particular pleased him. Avocados, artichoke heart, some kind of blue cheese dressing. Thank God they had not presented him with a Japanese meal, the dishes of mixed greens and meats of which he had eaten so much since the war. And the unending seafoods. He had gotten so that he could no longer abide shrimp or any other shellfish. "I would like to know," Robert said, "what he supposes it would be like in a world where Germany and Japan lost the war." Neither Paul nor Betty answered for a time. Then Paul said at last, "Very complicated differences. Better to read the book. It would spoil it for you, possibly, to hear." "I have strong convictions on the subject," Robert said. "I have frequently thought it over. The world would be much worse." He heard his voice sound out firm, virtually harsh. "Much worse." They seemed taken by surprise. Perhaps it was his tone. "Communism would rule everywhere," Robert continued. Paul nodded. "The author, Mr. H. Adamson, considers that point as to unchecked spread of Soviet Russia. But same as in First World War, even on winning side, second-rate, mostly peasant Russia naturally takes pratfall. Big laughingstock, calling Japan war with them when we have had to suffer to pay the cost," Robert said. "But we did it for a good cause, to stop Slavic world inundation." Betty said in a low voice, "Personally, I do not believe any hysterical talk of world inundation by any people, Slavic or Chinese or Japanese." She regarded Robert placidly. She was in complete control of herself, not carried away, but she intended to express her feeling. A spot of color, deep red, that appeared in each of her cheeks.